apparently Cummins has been a little bit naughty as of late, and the chickens have finally come home to roost in the form of a $1.7 billion fine from the EPA. I'm going to tell you what I think as a certified Cummins heavy-duty diesel mechanic. Well, today we have a beautiful truck in the shop. This is a Ram 3500 with the High Output Cummins, the big boy. And well, this is a limited truck as well. So not only has it got the big engine, it's got the big price tag with it. It's the perfect setup in my opinion. It's got the crew cab, the standard size box. Wonderful, wonderful truck. Comes with leaf springs, big payload. And wow, we were towing with it. Very, very nice truck. As always though, we're gonna talk about what's going on under the hood because our friends at Cummins have apparently got themselves in a little bit of trouble. Welcome back to the channel, guys, and Happy New Year. I wanted to start off 2024 with a little bit of a bang, and so we brought in a really nice truck, good old 3500 High Output Limited Cummins. What's not so beautiful is the price tag that Cummins is apparently paying in a settlement with the EPA, $1.7 billion for apparently running defeat devices from 2013 to basically present. And there's a lot to get into, like I said, as a licensed diesel mechanic. And I'm excited to kind of open up a discussion with you guys to see what is gonna happen with Cummins in the future here. I figured we start off with what Cummins has allegedly done, what we know so far. Again, it's a settlement, so there's not too many details out there as of yet. Then we'll jump into the mechanical aspect, maybe get a little bit technical as to what is going on with the emission systems and maybe what Cummins is doing to quote unquote defeat them. Thirdly, we'll just talk about, you know, what I think is gonna happen with Cummins and Ram's relationship, what maybe Cummins is gonna be forced to do, and just the fallout of this, you know, somewhat large environmental penalty that's gonna be raining down on Cummins parade. So right off the bat, there are roughly 1 million trucks involved in this, starting from 2013 to 2023. It is alleged that these said trucks are emitting too much nitrogen oxide gases, and that's what these defeat devices are allowing them to do. So when most people think of diesel emissions, they often think of like lots of black smoke. You know, something along the lines of like that. I feel like that's what people think about when they hear defeat devices. Now, let's dive into what exactly nitrogen oxide gases are. Nitrogen oxide gases are expressed as NO2. We often go by the term NOx, NOx sensors, NOx conversion rate, but NOx gases are highly toxic to humans. They're pretty bad for the ozone. They contribute to smog. So all in all, not really good stuff. NOx gases are emitted by every internal combustion engine, but with diesels, because of the cylinder pressures being so high, as well as the cylinder temperatures being so high, diesel engines tend to emit a lot more NOx gases than a normal gasoline engine, which is why a lot of regulation has come down on NOx gases coming out of diesel engines. The black smoke that you saw come out from this good old cat loader, that's called diesel particulate matter. That's basically just soot, unburnt fuel. You really can't see NOx gases in the air. Very much like carbon monoxide, NOx gases are almost odorless and almost colorless. They're not completely, but if you had, let's say, this truck right here with the good old High Output Cummins idling in front of you at a stoplight, you're not gonna see any black smoke. You're not gonna see any smoke at all. You really have no idea if this truck was emitting more NOx gases than what is regulated. For example, we'll fire this truck up here. This is a 2022 Cummins, so technically it falls well within the range of the engines with defeat devices on them. And you'll see out that tailpipe, there's no black smoke, there's nothing, you'll probably see nothing. So as you guys can see, there's literally zero black smoke, there's nothing. So starting in 2002, the EPA started to softly try and regulate the amount of NOx gases that came out of diesel engines. They did this by implementing EGR, or exhaust gas recirculation. Basically, taking some of your exhaust gas and putting it back into the intake for it to be reburned. And that does help to eliminate some of the NOx gases. And to this day, EGRs are still used on modern diesels. As you can see with this engine, this pipe right here is the EGR crossover pipe. That's carrying exhaust and it's going into your intake and it gets reburned. In 2010, the EPA wanted to further reduce the amount of NOx gases leaving these diesel engines. And they did so by introducing a pretty stringent regulation. And that is 0.2 grams of NOx gases per brake horsepower per hour, whatever that means. But that forced manufacturers in 2012 to start utilizing diesel exhaust fluid, or DEF. Diesel exhaust fluid, when sprayed into the exhaust, can help eliminate up to 90% of all NOx gases, basically transforming it into nitrogen and water. That's where we start to see the utilization of DEF, and unfortunately, as I know as a diesel mechanic, that's when we started to run in a ton of issues with these engines, tons of reliability issues, because it just starts to become a very complex system. So to me, it really is no surprise that in 2013, Cummins decided to allegedly try and, install defeat devices on their engines to try and somewhat bypass the NOx regulation emissions. So pretty much every modern diesel engine, every truck you see in the shop behind me, it utilizes three major components in their emission systems. The first one is a DOC, diesel oxidation catalyst. Basically what that does, it works very similar to your normal catalytic converter in a passenger car. It helps to transform carbon monoxide into water and carbon dioxide. Now, secondly is what's called a DPF, or a diesel particulate filter. And this is it right here. It's just a big filter. And this is what filters out that black smoke. This is why this truck right here does not look like that cat that we fired up earlier. It burns the same fuel. It's a diesel engine, but this filter takes out all that diesel particulate matter from being emitted into the air. Thirdly, there is an SCR, or a selective catalytic reduction, and that is what helps to eliminate the nitrogen gases we've been talking about. That's where the diesel exhaust fluid is sprayed into and a chemical reaction happens, and instead of nitrogen oxide gases coming out, you get nitrogen and water. Here's another nice example. This is off a Detroit engine. They use what's called a one box, so everything's all in one. This is your intake here, as you can see, nice and sooty. Intake goes through, first of all, your DOC, and then this is your DPF filters, which we'll remove and put new ones in there. Gases come through. And then this right here is your SCR, and this is where diesel exhaust fluid is sprayed in. And then we continue on. This is the exit, and you can see there's literally no soot, no nothing, because the exhaust coming out of there is pretty darn clean. This is your outlet NOx sensor right here. These emission systems are very complex. It has its own, literally its own computer there, all these sensors. And so this is why it's just very hard for manufacturers of diesel engines to stay reliable. Now, the way NOx gases are monitored are through, NOx sensors, which I already pointed out a couple, but this is them. They are used on basically every engine: Duramax, POWERSTROKE, Detroit Diesel, Cummins behind us. They use basically the same sensor, just a different length of cord. You have an inlet and an outlet, and the computer uses those two readings to calculate the NOx efficiency, or how much NOx gases are leaving the truck. So hopefully I didn't bore too many of you guys, but it is a little bit of a complex system, and so that is what Cummins has been accused of doing. It involves the SCR system, as well as the diesel exhaust fluid, and basically allowing more NOx gases out the tailpipe than what is supposed to be allowed. And there's a number of ramifications that may come from this. So I remember in 2015 when the Ram 3-liter Eco Diesel kind of got nailed by the EPA because they were, allegedly emitting too many emissions. And so they settled, and then Ram released a recall for those engines. And when owners went in and got those recalls, they found out their engines were dramatically underpowered from what they remembered. There was no acceleration, and that's what I fear what's gonna happen here, because, well, a really quick way, an easy way to lower NOx emission gases is to just simply lower power, lower the cylinder pressure, lower the cylinder temperature, less boost in the engine. So that is one possible option I could see happening, but I don't think that's gonna make anyone happy, and I don't think Cummins necessarily wants to do that either. The second option is they somehow develop an emission system that actually does what it's supposed to do and gets the NOx gases back into the regulated territory. That's going to cost a ton of money, and again, that would be some kind of mechanical recall, if you will. The third option, and that's what VW did, is buybacks, and this is where things get really, really sticky, because these are not Cummins trucks. It's just a Cummins engine. These are Ram trucks, and I don't know, and I don't think anyone really knows where and how that would happen. Cummins doesn't have dealerships. So it's like, if any work's gonna be done, it's gonna have to be kind of through the Ram dealerships, and who's gonna pay for that? So there is a lot of question marks, and I just really wanna, emphasize that this is not probably gonna be swept under the rug. This is a big deal. Another thing I find interesting is, well, I work in a Cummins certified shop. So obviously we get a lot of Cummins engines coming through, 15 liters, ISBs, ISLs coming through. And so the 6.7s or the ISBs, the commercial graded 6.7 Cummins engines, they are heavily detuned. These things are pretty hopped up. I'm pretty sure like the commercial grade 6.7 in school buses, or like the Freightliner M2s put out like 250 horsepower and like maybe 500 pound-feet of torque. So they're heavily detuned, and it seems like those engines are not kind of looped into this EPA fine. It's only the pickup truck engines, and I just find that interesting, that maybe because the commercial grade engines are already so detuned, they're much easier to get those emissions in that regulated area. I also feel like this has probably put the fear of God in some other manufacturers. The Ford POWERSTROKE, they're putting out huge power out of a 6.7 engine. Duramax, they're putting some big numbers up, and it's like, is the EPA going to start looking at them? Because if Cummins is doing this, and they've been doing it for 10 years to make those big power numbers, what other manufacturers are tweaking their emission numbers? Now, what I'm most curious about is you guys, the owners. If you guys own one of these trucks with the Cummins in it, what are you guys thinking? Are you nervous? Are you just gonna say, screw it, I'm not getting that recall if there is anything? Is your emission system already, in the ditch somewhere down the road, and it's been long gone for a long time, and you're not too worried either way? If I personally was gonna be buying a Cummins right now, I would probably hold off until there's a little bit more information released, until we know what is gonna happen with these engines. Again, I could be blowing this way out of proportion. Maybe it's just a simple little tweak, but I have a very strong suspicion that there are big things to come with these engines, with Ram. Maybe Ram drops Cummins. Who knows? Those big things could be happening. That's what people are rumoring. Anyways, guys, I hope you liked the video. If you did, don't forget to leave that thumbs up. I hope everyone has a glorious 2024. And again, if you guys own one of these trucks, let me know what you're thinking. I'm generally very curious what's going through your head right now. And well, as always, enough of me. We'll see you in the next frickin' video.